Perfect. And Richie, is it okay that we record you as well?
Yeah, that's totally fine. Thank you so much, Danielle.
Fabulous. Okay, so let's see. Richie ZYX. How do you pronounce that, by the way? I've been wondering about that.
No worries. It's ZXY, and it's a reference to the coordinates of planes. It's first depth, then width, then height. So it's
It's just
dimensions.
ZXY. You don't actually put a, like SQL, SQL, right? You don't actually put anything with it. Okay. All right. So digital fluency series, online hygiene. I am kind of excited about this. If you don't mind, I don't actually have your bio in front of me. So I take it you are able to introduce yourself. Is that okay? Read over.
Sure.
All right, perfect. I appreciate that. All yours. I believe you can share now. Let me know.
Gratitude. Thank you so much. Yeah, it looks like the permissions are enabled there. I'm going to first start with audio share. To me, Halloween's kind of like Christmas. So I'm going to celebrate by sharing a bunch of sounds just because that's one of the ways that I communicate. So if you can hear the bubbles, can you let me know?
Yes.
Nice. If you got bubbles going in, there's going to be a couple of the sounds coming in. But right now, everybody congratulate yourselves. You made it halfway through the day. There's victory to be had. There's a good reason to celebrate. Take a second. Also going to take a moment and breathe and move just a little bit. I do this every morning with a group of individuals, just kind of for our health. So I've kind of reskinned some yoga poses as different kind of tech concepts. So if that's something that you're like, you really don't want to participate with it, that's fine. I'm not even worried about it. The idea is to be able to make a sensation of feeling a little more balanced and getting a little more organized in your body. So first step is to pick up one foot and then put it on the ground. And the other one's pick up the other foot and put it on the ground. And what this is doing is just kind of telling your body that you're getting ready to land and you're getting ready to arrive. Now we're going to be breathing and moving a couple things, only 2 or 3 minutes, really simple. The first one's shrugging. So you're going to breathe in and shrug your shoulders up to your ears. You're going to breathe in and shrug up. Exhale and shrug down. 2 more of those, super simple. Breathing in, shrugging up. Exhale and shrugging down. Third one, breathing in, shoulders up. Exhale, shoulders down. Make you move around freely, kind of make whatever adjustments, probably moving some muscles. I mean, I've been here as well. We've been sitting and enjoying this knowledge, participating in this space. So the next one here is naturally called airplane mode. And airplane mode's a great one because I can tell if your camera's on, if you're doing airplane mode or not, because your arms are to the sides. And airplane mode on the mobile device is when you turn it off and it's not sending or receiving signals. So by getting your hands off the keyboard for a second and by going into airplane mode, you encourage yourself to open up your chest and open up your lungs, and blood freely flows from your organs up to your mind. So after doing airplane mode for a second, going to cats on keyboard. Cats on keyboard is hands in front of you, kind of like a zombie mode, but I'm not really into zombie so much. It's more like if you're trying to type something and there's cats in the way and you got to move them. Shout out to check. Did I lose something? I have a potential to sometimes drop for bandwidth. So cats on keyboards going forward, typing out, moving and breathing there. Shout out to Jim Hall and the Free DOS project. Last 2, multi-factor authentication pose or trust pose. You're shaking your own hand. So you're shaking your own hand, right to left to right. Your right hand shakes your left hand shakes your right hand. You're going to offset your shoulders for a second. You're going to enjoy the asymmetry of the body. And then it's multi-factor. You got to do the other side. So one side to the other. You got to respond to that text message. You actually have to submit your biometrics. It needs to be a real multi-factor authentication. Otherwise, it's just single factor that's all skinned up. So from here, last one is firewall pose. Firewall pose is wrapping your arms around your chest, taking a second just to wrap your arms around your chest. Breathing here 3 times. So breathing in, breathing out. Breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. And this is a real firewall. It's got ingress and egress. You got to open it up and do the other side, right to left and left to right. None of this one-way firewall stuff. Got to make sure all of your traffic is secure. We ain't even playing here. So when you're ready to, breathing in, breathing out. 2 more, breathing in, breathing out. Last one, and we're done with this nonsense. Breathing in, breathing out. That's it. Success. Done. Oh, that's successful.
So much. I needed that like you have no idea.
Wonderful. For sure. Happy to share. Thank you so much. And also from kind of a joke point of having sound effects, there will be no more after this, I promise. I was told to make some theme music for myself to kind of introduce. So as I get the slide queued up and get things ready, got about 60 seconds of sound. So. Remember to breathe. Richie ZXY. If you have the opportunity, please make sure to get a snack, something to eat, and drink some water.
Change your passwords.
Learn more at RichieZXY.com.
RichieZxY.com.
And at RainbowCrystal.org.
RainbowCrystal.org. Remember to breathe.
You could let me know if we're at that point. We should be good to proceed. Nice. Looks like we're good. All right. So this is a project I'm calling the digital hygiene part of a technology fluency series. I found through my life, and I'll get into that in the About Me slide, I found through my life that we got to create a common language about technology. So I'm super excited to be able to present this information and have a good time for the next probably 50 minutes or so. There'll be Q&As at the end. But let's get everything ready. Turn off your microphone, but that's already taken care of because the mods are awesome and everything is taken care of super sharp. I mean, people are silly humans, but beyond that, super impressed by how everything's being executed. Well done. Props to the house. Questions in the chat box because I'm going to go through a lot. Questions will be reviewed at the end. I'm not really going to slow down for questions just because once they get going, kind of like a steamroller. And there's going to be a lot of nostalgic throwbacks, a lot of pop culture references, and a brick ton of information. So if you want to tune out and just listen to what I'm saying, if you want to turn down the volume and look at the slides, I'm not really too worried about it. More so, I'm excited to present this information to those who are ready to receive it. And it's really about taking care of ourselves. So before we even get started, take some time to adjust yourself in your chair and get comfortable. Get some water if you got it. If you have some food nearby, kind of take care of that. It's going to be about an hour. Most of this is stuff people here already know. Shouldn't be too much new stuff. And it's about creating a common language that we can share with other individuals because some of these tech concepts can be really heavy and difficult to digest. So when you're ready to, take in a breath and we'll get started. Here we go. Digital hygiene. Is that like a VR soapbox? It's the title I chose. And this is today's achievable learning checklist. So we're going to discuss what is digital hygiene, what is it not, why do we call it digital hygiene to begin with? Really, why do we use those words? Why does it matter? Why bother? 5 simple ways to improve your digital habits. And then near the end, there'll be some bonus tips for online etiquette. I may have made too many slides for the amount of time space. So if I get really sped up at the end, that'll be why. This is about me. Performing arts specialist means that I'm backstage a lot. I've done backstage for tours or for concerts or for shows, and eventually backstage lighting and sound technology became intrinsically intertwined with IT technology. And I was raised due to some good luck in a family that had me on a computer when I was younger. So at 34 now, I've got a unique cultural landscape because I watched the internet grow from Internet 1, which was kind of participate, Internet 2, where it did some processing, and then Internet 3, where it's kind of giving information back to us. So now we're continuing to scale, and now Internet 4 and 5 are where Netflix auto chooses what you want to watch next, and the services and IoT are taking care of themselves. But being able to share this information with people is a difficult thing to do unless you have a shared dialogue or a shared language, and building that language is what I'm here to talk with you about today. Cut to the chase. Why are we here? What's really going on? I don't want to waste anybody's time. If this isn't your topic, you've got other things to do, dial into the CTFs, because now that I know what a CTF is, I'm going to dive into way more of those. I just didn't have a conceptual understanding of what those words meant. So basically, I'm here to blame everything on AOL. I mean, not really, but I think AOL and the early ISPs created a unique cultural landscape because when we accessed the internet, we got it kind of through their platform. So we got sort of a filtered bandwidth connection to the early internet rather than being connected through sort of a raw addresses and HB access points, which we have now. Digital hygiene, in a nutshell, is going to be defined here as a set of guidelines and best practices to help keep people in their digital life healthy. Much like regular hygiene helps you stay healthy and safe, digital hygiene helps you achieve the same in your digital life. Digitalization has become part of our daily business and private lives. The world has never been more technology-centric. Especially more and more as brick and mortar businesses and solutions have moved online, the sheer volume of transactions that's taking place online is staggering. The digital acceleration hasn't been without risks, which a lot of people here are very, very familiar with. But one of those is that the early users weren't really given early habits. We weren't taught about good passwords and good usernames and good file structure and etiquette early on, many of us. Some of us were. But in my mind, this is real stuff. It's like the armor of the modern world. There's hundreds of people walking around with phones that they don't have the settings properly configured on. So they're not really insulated with good practices. Maybe they haven't updated their applications and can't really like tell people to change their passwords too many times. Otherwise, they'll just block your brain out and be like, he's the guy who says change the passwords. So there's other ways to describe it. How to describe it can get kind of confusing and tricky. So there's a book in 1978 called Illness as a Metaphor. And it's one of the first times that it's been defined where we can all resonate with the idea of comparing things to illness because we've all been sick. So if you're about to go into a meeting and you say, oh, this meeting's going to be a headache, people know what you mean because linguistically we have a shared experience of what a headache is. And if you're saying that an event is going to cause a headache, you're kind of using that illness as a metaphor for how the event's going to make you feel. If you say you're really excited about something, that's a different kind of metaphorical description. But usually people need clear language to enable new behaviors. And using illness as a metaphor started happening when the Western medical environment was treating things as inflammation and cancers and different kinds of viral infections according to different dispositions. If you want more information, check out the book, Illness as a Metaphor by Susan Sontag. But the real reason that we call it digital hygiene is because of another book that happened in 2014. It's called Transcoding the Digital. And it was referring to how metaphors matter in new digital space. So it was the first time that people presented in text that we could talk about virtual communities and cyberspace and social networks as a healthy social network versus an unhealthy social network. Or this is a healthy website, or this is an unhealthy website. It has problems with it. Maybe it has like a digital disease in some ways. So now they kind of understand where the language of it comes from, where the structures can be rooted to, like why we use the term digital hygiene or cyber hygiene, as some people call it. What is it not? Digital hygiene is not digital citizenship. I think these are separate things. We need to start having language that's supportive of these. So digital hygiene will be defined as specific behaviors people either do or do not practice regularly as part of their interactions with technology. They keep their accounts, their credentials, and their identity safe. Either you do update your apps citizenship is not Zoom blasting this conference and being total idiots. That's, you want to be like a participant of the digital world and you want to be respectful. So similarly, if you sign up for a new account somewhere, you don't want to post on all of the web forums and like blast out a whole bunch of traffic because you're not taking the time to observe how the community digitally is communicating with itself. I don't know if anybody who started working with the internet back when it was still FidoNet and that kind of thing had any idea we would get to where we are now, because it's really better than any sci-fi book I could have imagined, but it's really advanced and really complicated and the nuances are still being described. So digital hygiene matters just like regular hygiene matters. If people walk around and they're not bathing and they're not taking care of themselves, they're going to get different kinds of negative effects in their life, either socially or individually for their health. If every single file on somebody's computer is named new file, every folder is named new folder 5, new folder 10, new folder 11, everything, all the file names are horrible, that's going to cause like a mental train wreck if they're trying to do productive work on the computer. So you want to think about digital hygiene as a holistic activity rather than just how you interact with the internet. It's how you're interacting with all of the technology and the information that's sort of off-gassing from these pieces of technology. In virtual worlds, it's just an account and a picture. In a face-to-face, you can tell if somebody hasn't showered in a couple days. Like you can, like, there's the ability to kind of moderate that sense perception. And the awareness of digital hygiene is when you notice somebody's email does or doesn't have formatting. Things are or are not clearly stated. Systems are or are not constructed well. So being able to have more conversations about them, this is a really executed digital thing, is the same as saying this is a really awesome party. The gala is nice. Everybody who's organizing, the door people are really nice. Everything's clear. There's maps. The bathrooms are clearly indicated. The lights are the right level. The music is not obstructive. It's a good environment. You have to have a language to be able to have that experience. Why does it really matter? I made up a quote and credited it to Forrest Gump. I'm going to do that a couple times, but I'll tell you straight out that that's how it's working. So I just want to run around on the internet completely naked with my passport open in my hand. Because that's how I feel like a lot of people treat their Instagrams and their social medias and all. They're posting really reckless personal data everywhere. and they're not really paying attention to how they're holding themselves in the digital container. And I think it has a lot to do with safety. Because if somebody's really recklessly posting things like, oh, I'm going out of town for the next 5 days, so nobody will be at my house. So if you want to come break in and steal the new TV I posted about 3 days ago, like it's maybe not the best thing that you want to post publicly to everybody on your block, like a social group. If it's a private network space and you're like going to share photos with them, like, okay, it seems over descriptive, but I mean, I guess if you wanted to, we aren't talking about these things, so we're not able to manage them. And it's the conversation that allows us to measure it. Like I said, moving forward, got tons of stuff, but here we're going to pause for a water break. So if you have water, I'm going to implore you to take a moment and to drink some water, because we're all human. And if we don't drink water, we will die. Cheers to your health. All right. Taking a second, resetting the brain, moving forward. So random fact of the day, there's this guy named Neil Harbison, and he has an implanted antenna on the top of his head that translates information into his brain. I didn't think it was real either, so I looked it up, and here's how it works. There's a device that's implanted on the top of his skull that comes out over the top, and his sensor detects the waves of color that are coming in and then translates it into like an acoustic electronic signal inside of his brain. And he's active on Twitter, Neil Harbison. You can reach out to him if you want to. I think it's really interesting, cyborg futurist implant kind of thing. But how is that secured in some ways? If it's wireless information, there's got to be some kind of secure protocol to make sure that that's taken care of. So anyway, back to what we were talking about. 5 simple ways to improve your digital habits. First one, strong account awareness. Your username is your digital footprint, so be aware of it. You don't necessarily have to use the same username for your power company that you do for your forum about trading baseball cards. They can be different usernames. It doesn't have to be the same username all the way across, but a lot of individuals don't really hold strong account awareness. And apparently I can add a heading here, so that's cool. Getting serious about your credentials is important because you want to make sure that the passwords that you have are things that you know what they are. If you're using a password keyring or you're storing your credentials on a different thing, you just want to be confident about that knowledge. You don't want to rely on being a password reset all the time and allowing some other service to allow you to reset your credentials, because that's ultimately an ineffective way to handle that account. You wouldn't go to a physical place you have an account and ask them to cut you a new key every time because you lost the key. That would waste their keys. But we act as though the digital tax isn't really there. And these are basically the mouth and the eyes of your digital life. Because if you're going to log into something, you have a password, and that's how you're like interacting with it. So it's how you're participating with the digital landscape. And we need to have, in my opinion, more consciousness about it. In order to get there, we have to share a language. So making ways that people can talk about it is important. Making fun pictures is important too. But updating your applications regularly, at least once a week. Check to see that your applications or services have been updated. If you're holding on an update for whatever reason, I'm not talking to you, that's fine. If you intentionally are doing something that needs a dated or legacy piece of software, that's totally understandable. But a lot of people I am familiar with have like 45 or 600 application updates waiting on their mobile phone. And they don't really realize that that means that there could be some problem if one of those application updates is really important, which most of them are fairly important because that's why they're updates. But it's a conversation, again, we don't really have. So to me, it's really simple. Just update your apps like at least once a week, even your OS. I mean, sometimes you got to update your refrigerator now, I guess, if the firmware needs it or something, the toasters. This is a cool cyberpunk future, not where I expected us to be. But now that we're here, presenting ways to move forward would be having good backups. So offline backup of your data, a good backup is a redundant backup. I'm going to drill into this just a little bit because it's hard to talk to people about backups if they don't really get it. So in my mind, good backup actually starts at the file name level. Use a good file name. There's no pain in the world like sorting through poorly named files. Beyond the file name, look at the file tree and the workflow that you use. How are you interacting with the technology? Are you putting pictures in the pictures folder? Or are you putting pictures in your content folder that you have in the root directory? I'm not telling you how to do it. I'm just asking you to think about how you're doing it. Begin to put cognizance on it because a lot of the systems work better or worse depending upon where that information is stored, how the file names are used. And what's a good backup? A good backup, as far as I understand, follows the 3-2-1 rule. There's 3 copies of the information. There's 2 of them local, meaning that you can get to, and then 1 of them offsite, like detached off on a cold network somewhere that you can't get from the same place, because that way you have some form of redundancy. A lot of individuals who are resistant against changing their passwords or using more than one password, they want to use the same password for everything, which I don't think is a good choice personally. Most of those individuals also trust in the backup on the cloud. And that's cool, but like the cloud is following its own rules for backups. And unless you know what those are, blind faith may not be the move. It may, it's up to you. So rounding out, tip number 4 is to protect your connection. This is enabling HTTPS, learning about multi-factor authentication, shaking the hands, exploring VPN options. Going to these just a little bit because I think they're important to discuss with people when they go to the internet, because in my brain, the internet still runs on like FTP sites and Napster and Kazaa, and like BitTorrents are still brand new, and hash webs and all this stuff is like just beginning. But I remember BBSs and growing up and seeing all these forums at IRC when nobody was a person, we were all numbers. I was very curious. Protecting the connection on the internet. First one's HTTPS. Preaching to the choir, I know it. Communicating the idea that a secure connection is important is usually all I'm trying to say by that. Multi-factor authentication, 2-factor, multi-factor, as long as there's more than one factor right now is important. Whether it's a physical key like a USB, whether it's a biometric like a thumbprint or the retina thing or the face print for your phone, whether it's email, whether it's a text message, those are pretty good ideas, because if all of a sudden your multi-factor goes off and you didn't ask for it, you got a heads up, yo. So better to have than not have and need in that kind of situation. And VPNs, been back and forth personally about the ways in which to talk to people about a VPN. My favorite example right now is if you have to connect to a Starbucks and you need to change some money in your bank account and you don't know how many people in the Starbucks, a VPN is like a private tunnel to be able to make it so that you can get to your bank account. It's an oversimplified metaphor in some ways, but a lot of individuals now don't know that on their phone or on their mobile device, they can get VPNs and use them as they need. Signing out of web applications is more than clicking the red X. You actually have to go to like log out and like sign off and like drop the credentials, toss your cookies, as it was once called, release that kind of identifying factor, because that's the thing that will allow you to keep aware of your digital habits. And the digital habits are, if you get super excited about Frisbee golf, so you subscribe to 10 Frisbee golf newsletters, and then for the next 2 months, you're confused why all these Frisbee golf things are coming in your email. So it's an interesting pattern of organization to track digital habits, because our digital habits and our physical habits are very closely connected. So grooving along, practice mindful digital citizenship. Going to go into this concept a little bit because I know it's going to be a hot button topic, whether we talk about it or not. So I'd rather us like be ahead of the curve and have a language that's already being used in a lot of social circles to massive success. So with the line between digital and physical blurring, in my mind, staying safe, keeping vigilant, and acting with a healthy outcome in mind has a lot to do with being intelligent with your studies, being intelligent with your attention, being intelligent with what you're doing with your digital citizenship. If you're visiting some country and you're going to see all of the art galleries, but you're not really paying anything for it, well, you're not motivating their economy. But if you're going there and you're volunteering to help plant crops or do things or like participate in physical labor, then you're participating in citizenship in a different way, like a global community. So saw a question popped in the chat. Not going to dive too deep into it till Q&A time. Practicing mindful digital citizenship, going into that a little bit more. In my mind, when I'm on the internet, I think of it like a farmer's market. I try to hang out and have cool stuff and see all the things around, but like some of those, I personally don't eat meat. So if there's like somebody who's selling like jerkies or things or like different kind of barbecue sauce, like that's cool. I'm just not going to go over there. I don't think that I got to go in there like, and like cause a bunch of havoc. I'm just like, okay, that's fine. And if there are people who are bullying or causing problems, it's like, hey, whoa, wait, where are we? This farmer's market, yo, like you don't need to be doing that. We all need to like be aware that this person's acting out of sorts for all of our health. It's not that you're trying to go on flame wars and say this person did that, but you want to maintain a level of accountability for not only your actions, but the communities that you participate in. So it's a bigger conversation that I hope this touching on it inspires people to continue exploring in its direction. Do we live on the internet? Do we live in our country? Is internet a basic human right? Is it a service? Is it something we're entitled to? Is it something only people who pay for should be able to have? I don't know the answer to these questions, and I'm not trying to say that I'm going to cover any of them right now. These are just things to think about. So we're going to continue getting more and more digital as far as I can tell. And the leading of the curve is, again, creating a new language and being an architect of the understanding that's going to be utilized. So there's a lot of like fantastical older ways. I like 80s sci-fi because it like utopianizes how technology could be. And I think that's a good way to be inspired when some of the things get really, really gnarly, because sometimes stuff goes that's not so useful. So here's another definition of digital citizenship, and this is coming from Evolve Learning. They have quite an interesting chart, quite an interesting way to present it and discuss the idea. So leaving the slide up as it's to be read, it's pretty similar to what I discussed before. Digital citizenship encompasses a safe, legal, responsible, and ethical technology use, as well as leveraging technology to achieve one's highest potential and serve others. Made a cool little graphic too. I highly encourage you to check out their resources. They broke it down into safety, legality, responsibility, ethics and values, and personal best and social good. If those are the metrics for digital citizenship, I'm interested, because the first one has to do with safety. We all want to use technology and not cause somebody's pacemaker to stop. We all want to use technology and not accidentally take money from somebody else's bank account or intentionally take money from somebody else's bank account. We want to be able to make sure that if we buy something online and we get a brick instead of a hard drive, we can actually send it back and say, hey, wait a minute, this was a scam. This person wasn't really selling hard drive. They were selling bricks that were cut to the exact same weight. So it felt like it was the hard drive, but it wasn't. Dun, dun, dun. Clever bad guys. The legality part, it can be a problem when people don't know the digital laws that they're breaking. And so I think that's an important conversation to have, is to figure out what the intellectual property laws are, who you need to give credit to, how you want to cite your resources, how you want to respect somebody's copyrighted material. I know a lot of DJ friends of mine will use songs and upload their mix on Spotify, and then Spotify takes it down and say, you didn't have clearance to use that song. You can't do that. Well, what do you mean? It's the mix that I made. I'm the DJ. It's like, well, no, the producer made that song, and so they own the intellectual rights to it. So technically that would be illegal redistribution. If you're claiming that is your music, you have to credit that as their music, and there's a different rights to follow. But if people don't know, it's very difficult for them to follow. So a lot of the digital citizenship right now are things that we don't know, and being able to have a conversation so we can learn more about it is how we can begin to share in its architecture and how to make it something that we want it to be, rather than seeing it's a static thing. The responsibility would be intentionally using the networks. I've been really impressed when things early on got a little bumpy, that everybody kept their cool. I was like, wow, I've been in so many circles where people go, oh my gosh, I can't believe this person acted so unreasonably. They're so absurd. But it was just, nope, diffuse the problem, take care of it, permeate, move forward, because that shows that there's a level of responsibility and respect. And I think that there can be a lot of good developmental growth when it's more common for people to be spending time in person, because they've taken a little bit of energy to meet in the online and to authentically share a space where respect is a premium. If you're talking to somebody on a Zoom call and they're looking the other way, or they walk off camera or something, you may not really notice it, but you feel affected. You'll have a sensation of them being checked out because literally they walked off camera. They can still be present in the conversation, sure, but that has to do with values. If the value is a business meeting where you're meeting with somebody about business and they walk off camera, you could feel slighted. But if the value is you're talking to somebody you know personally, and you know they need to go get up to feed their fish or something, and they just absentmindedly do that and walk off screen, you're not going to be affected by it. But this kind of language of kindness and empathy and good judgment and seeing the best in other people on the internet is a learned skill. It's a lot easier for individuals to spend 14, 16, 18 hours on TikTok every day and then be confused when the world isn't like TikTok. I noticed, to the best of my ability, when I'm interacting with people online and in the real world, what they're doing in relationship to their best. So if they're talking to me and their language sounds like they're doing their best, I'm down. Because being able to talk to someone who is putting forth the effort, they're bringing forward a sense of ownership. That's what I'm learning that the CTFs are all about. I had no idea that that was what the term was. I thought there was literally a flag somewhere that you had to literally move. But now it's collecting information, and it's being able to say, oh, okay, I'm going to educate myself in this platform of how to use these tools by following a labyrinth of information. I think that's beautiful. I think that's a really cool way to teach the skill and to hone the craft, so that individuals who want to know how these things work have the opportunity to do it in a respectful container. With that in mind, while I move through these, I'm going to see how the copy is, how the language is. I want to know what the levels of respect that are involved for, because that's going to see how people are encouraged to do their best. And when we talk about going into more virtual realities or more digitized spaces, digital citizenship and online hygiene, digital hygiene, these are going to be really important topics. They're going to be on the top of our brain. If we don't know about them early, it could be an interesting learning curve. So social leverage, social good, leveraging technology. How you express yourself online is how you express yourself physically, because physically you're pushing the buttons to use the online. So we need to find a way to merge these things and say that, well, oh, this person is this way on the internet, and then they're this way in person. Well, in person, they had to use the keyboard to do the internet thing to make that happen. So being able to think critically about how we were leveraged socially to who we are, whether we found the technology of service or whether we found the technology something to push back against until we learn more about, that kind of interaction is going to help us be more aware of the impact of our use of the technology and how other people can be affected as well. So just for reset and shout out to the old video games, I think it's important for individuals who spend a lot of time in a digital space to remember that there's still fun to be had. I know it's really easy to get lost in spreadsheets and to get lost in tasks and checklists and not stop and play pinball. But I'm a big advocate for walking around the block. If you can get out of your house and walk around every now and then, it's good for your health. Or at least play a game of some time. This is from safesearchkids.com, and this is the 9 Ds of digital citizenship. Talk about it in a really simple way. Digital access, digital etiquette, digital commerce, digital rights and responsibilities, digital literacy, digital law, digital communication, digital health and wellness, digital security. And I've said a lot of digital things, and I've droned on like for quite a while now. I am very familiar with this. So taking a second to kind of reorient and reset. Mindfulness is something that we don't do much in computing talk, but I think it's really important because you need to be mindful when you're using computers. So I'm gonna drop the screen for a second, and I'm gonna set a timer for about 3 minutes. Let's see if this works. There, 3-minute timer. Just gonna hang out and reset and be mindful for about 3 minutes. That'll go through the last amount of the slides. If anybody has anything they want to say, kick on a microphone or drop anything, that's cool. But I'm just gonna mute and hang out and hold the space for a second. we're bringing things back together for focus. A lot of my background as a sound guy. I was either on tour with groups or doing Shakespeare plays or paying attention to a lot of little microphones and a lot of speakers, a lot of groups of individuals and what they were listening to. I found that music to me was really important when it had rest. And so when I'm learning things and going through new information, I got to make sure to like slow down and digest and process it. So sort of like a TLDR for everything we talked about before. When you use the internet, think, cool, nice, now we're here. So in mindfulness practices, when you have something in front of you, you're focused on it. So when we're using technology, we're doing things. And sometimes we're doing a whole lot of things. And when we're doing things with technology, sometimes we forget about the fact that we're human beings. We get so focused in the doing that we kind of forget to land in our body and get up and stretch every couple hours or get a drink of water or practice the nurturing self-care that we physically need. So creating a language to talk about it is how we can prevent ourselves from glitching too much. As ideas, as digital etiquettes, tips and tricks, things that I think are really important and concepts to share is if you can think about your computer like a samurai sword. It's a little bombastic, but your laptop or your computer is like a digital tool that you're climbing through a landscape with. You're carving with light. You're creating a new pattern. And so you want to be mindful with that. You wouldn't sort of want to walk around with a butcher knife in your hand and just kind of walk through a bunch of places and potentially stab or cause a problem. Similarly, you don't really want to walk around with your phone open to all your critical, important information screens just wandering around. That's not a good way to do it. So for me, it's right about every hour. I'm not quite sure who decided that we were going to use 24 and 60 to count time, but since those are the numbers that we're using to count time, every hour or so, I try to take a second physically and look at my body and have I moved? Have I got any water? Have I looked at a screen all day? Because if I've only looked at light, I'm actually going to get dehydrated through my eyes. So I have to make sure to give water back into it, the body system, otherwise it can be sort of out of balance. So grooving along, closing things up, kind of a gathering up last points would be limiting your parallel tasks. Set a personal limit for how many maximum tabs you want to have open. Maybe how many maximum things you want to do side by side. Maybe the maximum screens you want pointed at you at once. It's going to help you task switch more effectively and accomplish your goals with digital minimal static. But if you have one machine that's rendering a video and saving an audio file and decompiling this and downloading that, and then the machine goes offline, oh, that really sucks, because now you're going to be halfway through a bunch of things. But if you prioritized your focus and attention, did them one at a time, and used the optimum amount of focus and CPU on each task, and then it went down, you're only going to lose the one that you're working on. The other ones weren't being done in a slow parallel. So I know we're encouraged to switch screens and to hyperthread and to do these things, but for your own sanity, I recommend people put some limits on it. Otherwise, you're going to have 10 windows and every window has 500 tabs. That's stored somewhere in your brain, somewhere in the back of your head. You're keeping all of those loops open, and that can be mentally fatiguing, which can eventually have a physical effect on fatigue. So not so good in that way. And in the bottom corner of the slide, there's plus 9 HP, plus 7 chill, plus 5 focus, plus 3 magic, plus 1 breathing. I made that as stickers. So I give those stickers to my friends. And I found that we can create a social culture. I found that if I make memes and my friends like the memes, I print the memes as stickers, and then I give my friends the meme stickers. So we can find ways to encourage our digital creations to support our physical world. And a lot of it's, are you making content or are you just working? Maybe it's making content that you're only sharing with people you truly, really care about. You may do some 3D modeling and think that that's neat, or work with some audio, a synthesizer. Creating a culture of using the technology for productive means will help you connect with other people and how to talk about it. So I like word maps. So I took a bunch of the words that are related to it and I made some word maps. And this is from Digital Hygiene. You can see the other big words that pop out are secure, security, internet, personal, cyber, phishing, password, citizenship, users, practices, platform, just mind food. So additional ideas would be talking to people about antivirus. You can get it on every kind of device. It's important to have. Talk to people about their email addresses. You don't have to know what email they have or what they're getting, but just mention like you have an email box. If your email box was a physical mailbox, what would it look like? Would it be just like jammed through a bunch of things that you have never opened, that you never intend to open and you don't want? Or is it fairly well like organized now? Are there folders and things go to where they need to go and everything's kind of mapped and taken care of? Also, password management. I think password managers are important to understand. If you want to use them, great. If you want to use different kinds of passwords, I'm not going to have that conversation right now. At least conceptualize it. And the last thing to dial in before I think about question space is, have I been pwned? If you don't know about this resource, please check it out. Have I been pwned? Excuse me, comes from, have I been owned, or have I been like seriously defeated at this digital video gamer task, wherein which I feel as though I know nothing about it, and the people who have succeeded know all about it. So I feel like they have owned the game, and I have been owned, or I've been pwned. It's internet lingo culture, which is important. So I put in one of my addresses, and I found, oh no, I had been pwned. I'd been pwned 3 different times. I was pwned by Cafe Press because I signed up to make something for them and they got breached. A credential stuffing and an evite. So my compromised data consisted of email addresses, names, passwords, phone numbers, and physical address, but I don't think I ordered anything from Cafe Press, so that should be fine. So I think it's important for people to, again, know that these resources exist so that they can educate themselves. So taking a deep breath, should be all the things I have to say. Appreciate your patience. At the end of the day, digital hygiene is a subjective concept. You can't say to somebody, you're digitally dirty. You haven't taken a digital bath. You need some digital soap. Get some digital bronzers. Make sure to floss your digital teeth. Like it has to do with what we use the technology for and how we respect ourselves and how we respect other people and how we have boundaries about what we're sharing and what we're not sharing. And that's the conversation that I'm trying to help inspire. So the takeaways were a strong account awareness, update your apps, have good backups, protect your connection, practice mindful digital citizenship. Cool projects you should check out. Mental health hackers, if you have not heard of them, they're super neat. They help you hack your mental health and stabilize the things in the brain, which are very important. Cyber Resilience Project, similarly, cultivate stronger cyber resilience, navigating through the digital plane. There's a lot of tolls that can be taken on the mind. And S2Me is like a security assessment test where you can send it to people that you know and say, hey, can you fill out this test real quick? Or you can take it yourself and see how you kind of rank on their system to begin. If anybody wants to capture, and you can fill your name in on there, and then it will be done and complete, and you will have social proof and evidence, even if you don't wish it. Oh, the internet connection went unstable. Well, maybe I'm here, maybe not. This is the slide that you can show that you have participated in this. I appreciate your time and patience. Any questions? I see one question that came through. I got thoroughly distracted by when it came through, but it says to me, if your password is compromised, you can change it. What if your fingerprint is compromised? How do you change it? I think that has a lot to do with why you're using the fingerprint as the biometric for the storage device to begin with. Because if it's a situation where in which you need a fingerprint so you can access some kind of system that has biometric and fingerprint is the only option, what is the purpose for your fingerprint not working? You could probably lop off your finger or put it on a fake finger like print thingy like from the movies and do that and like artificially spoof it somehow. But I think the idea is if you know that a credential is compromised, you can now act with the awareness that that credential is compromised rather than thinking you're going to pivot to an uncompromised credential and then make the same choices. So valid question. If I have a better answer, I would definitely reach out and let you know. Any other questions? Cool. Done.
I do see one, somebody DM'd me, will this slide deck be available?
Oh yeah. I'll make it available. I'll make sure it gets to the people so that you can share it and review it yourself. Absolutely. As will the recordings, I believe.
Thank you. Yep. Oh yes, we're definitely going to slice up the recording, but they had asked about the slide deck. Thank you very much.
Yeah, totally.
Love your website. Love your website, by the way. I've been lurking in there.
Oh, thank you so much. Absolutely. Yes, and I heard somebody say, yes.
This might be a philosophical question. Hygiene, data hygiene, digital hygiene. Is too much digital hygiene, is it bad? Or perhaps it's not a proper analogy, like in real life, you know, at times for you to be protected against some disease, they will actually introduce at least that into your body. You need to get infected so that you could be strong also. Is that not a good analogy, also philosophical?
I absolutely understand what you're saying and agree completely with the concept, because it has to do with the division between digital warfare and digital health and wellness, because that metaphor kind of drops there. So I think personally that the creative culture is how to gain those antibodies. By creating music, by creating art, by creating things, by writing blog articles, by participating in culture, by bringing things forward, you're making yourself vulnerable to those new threats. Because that's the thing that's making it so you're not using hand sanitizer every day and then like burning off your skin's natural ability to defend itself, or like overwashing your hair and making it into a problem. That would be, in my mind, somebody who's only working in securing systems, and they're not creating content and generating it and sharing it with their friends and emailing an attachment to a file that's something they made, some piece of art that they're authentically connected to, because then they're seeing the internet as a pathway of communication rather than like a doctor seeing every grocery store as like a breeding ground for germs, rather than the doctor seeing the grocery store as the place where community is structured, because in the grocery store is where you see the people that you live around. And so you kind of create a base level understanding of your social hierarchy when you're in the grocery store and how you feel about there. Similarly on the internet, if you're bringing content forward and posting stuff, I think a lot of people are only commenting, and that's causing them to be hyper sterile because they're not making posts. They're just commenting and cleaning and commenting and cleaning, and they may not be getting the social antibodies that will be important in the future. That's an awesome question, though. Gratitude.
Thank you very much for that.
We still have more time, folks. You could send your questions into the chat or ask them yourself on mute.
Yep, you can ask in chat, you can raise your hand, either way.
So I have a question actually for the organizers. When you guys put this together, I know kind of turning the tables here, but were there like Discords, organizations and group and like the automation and all this when it was an in-person meeting as well?
No, not when it was an in-person meeting. We did last year. We decided to have a virtual conference last year, and somebody said, "Where do you think that should be?" And they said, "Discord." And then they said, "Yeah, Danielle, go take care of that." So yeah.
Nice. Wow, it's phenomenal. I think it's really well executed. My brain, like I'm asking because my brain is super excited to see what it will be in years future when you have this digital infrastructure of a backend that's so finely tuned and like click here to accept. All of a sudden you have access to things like, whoa, that's really snappy. That's really nice.
Yeah, we played a little catch up. There were some cool things that I wanted to implement that I saw at a recent security conference, and I just simply didn't have time to put it in place. So
Fair. What would you say the biggest digital learning lesson would be, taking the organization of people physically and then having them in a digital space?
The learning lesson for that?
Well, I guess the thing that you learned last year that you did different this year, because last year was the first time it went digital, right?
Yeah, last year was the first time it was digital.
Right. And now it's like a finely tuned machine, so it's only going to get better and better. So I'm trying to identify what was the gap that was closed between last year and this year.
Making sure that I had enough personnel to pull it off.
Nice. Okay. Very good. Load sharing.
So yeah, well, I pulled in a bunch of my friends last year because I only had a couple of weeks to stand up a server. And so I had to learn Discord and stand up the server for the conference in about 3 weeks. And so I got on the phone with my friends. I had somebody from Luxembourg. I had somebody from Alaska. Yeah, I have really good friends. And they all pitched in. One of the guys here, Dave Probinski, he really saved my butt, and he did a lot of the back end work. And my best friends, Wendy and Michael, they went in and learned the bots. So they knocked out the bots, and yeah, load sharing. Nice. It's phone a friend, man. That's all it was. But this year, Alex and Chris, I want to make sure I don't leave anybody out. Adashina took over Zoom because I got into some fires, and he just stood up and took over Zoom and did his thing. Chris Blue Fox has been throwing himself in. Last year, he helped as well. He jumped in and helped get everybody assigned and everything in Discord. But Alex and Andrew and then Mr. Anderson have been busting their hump getting things done and putting out fires today. So I'm ever so grateful for everybody.
Good things. Excellent. Well, I'm super grateful to be invited to come and share and talk.